recon out of that North Market.
Yeah, I need to
When
know.
is it? Saturday?
Oh, well,
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to join us. Let me make sure all of our panelists and myself are ready. So today's webinar is on nurturing your resilience with self-care. My name's Alexis Terrell, and I'm the Continuing Education Manager here at HealthLinks. For those who are not familiar with HealthLinks, HealthLinks is a mentoring program that champions health and safety at work. We offer evidence-based healthy workplace certification and advising to organizations and their teams to help them work to promote a culture of health, safety, and well-being. We are a nonprofit program based at the Center for Health, Work, and Environment at the Colorado School of Public Health. And today's topic aligns with our one of our 6 HealthLinks benchmarks about health policies and programs. And you can learn all about all of our benchmarks at healthlinkscertified.org. So before I introduce our speakers today, I want to just let you know a few announcements. All of our participants are kept on mute throughout and during the presentation, so don't worry about any background noise in your vicinity. But if you do have a question, there should be a Q&A box that you can see either on the toolbar at the top or bottom of your screen. You can also use the chat feature. We want this to be a very interactive dialogue and discussion today, so don't wait. You can just type your question at any time, and I will make sure our speakers know so we can make sure you gain the most out of your time with us today. Also, this webinar is being recorded, and you'll be sent a link to the recording in our follow-up email, and you can feel free to share that link. It'll be on YouTube, and you can share it with as many people as you want. We'll also send you copies of today's slides and any additional resources that would be beneficial. The follow-up email also includes an opportunity to provide us with feedback, which will help us make better decisions on what to offer in the future. So please use that. And SHRM credits are available, and the instructions for claiming those will be in the follow-up email as well. So without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce our speakers today, who you probably see on your video in the corner. Brandy McConahey is the Wellness Program Administrator at Progressive Health Center. Prior to working for Progressive Health Center, she spent 12 years in academia facilitating health and wellness programs. Brandy completed her training as an integrative health coach through Duke University School of Integrative Medicine, and she will be board certified this coming June. Christina Littleton works at Progressive Health Center as well, where she empowers hospital employees to achieve a higher level of well-being and performance through a whole person approach. A little over a year ago, she was pursuing a career in the fast-paced environment of commercial real estate while trying to maintain her self-care practices. After experiencing a bit of burnout, she went on to discover her passion and complete the Integrative Health Coaching Program at Duke University. And finally, but not least, Angie Hartman is also an employee wellness health coach at Progressive Health Center. Exhausted from the hustle of corporate life, Angie decided to devote her career to her passion for helping others achieve a healthy lifestyle. She obtained yoga teacher and AFAA group fitness instructor and ACE personal training certifications. In addition, she recently completed the IIN Integrative Health Coaching Program. Her clients have experienced not only weight loss results, but also improved strength, flexibility, and energy. So with that, I will turn it over to our presenters who will tell you a little more about themselves and then lead our webinar. Thank you so much for being here, ladies.
Great. Thanks, Alexis. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Nurturing Your Resilience Through Self-Care. We are extremely grateful that you're here with us today and joining us. We really appreciate it, and we're excited for the full hour that we have with you all. As Alexis said, we have 3 presenters today, so we want to just quickly introduce ourselves. Since our presentation is around self-care, we would like to each give you our own individual definitions of self-care because it is so subjective, as well as share some of the practices that each one of us have in our own lives currently. So with that, again, my name is Brandy McConahey, and I am a Colorado native. I've been with Progressive Health Center for about a year now as their wellness program administrator, and I also serve as an integrative health coach for the company. I am sitting for my board exam this coming June, so less than a month away, which I'm really excited about. And prior to that, I did do 12 years in academia, really focused in on content creation, programming, all within the health and wellness realm, comprehensive health education. So it's always been my passion. I really enjoy it. And I would say if I were to give you a definition of self-care, again, it's so fluid. For me currently, it's the ways in which I am my most authentic self. It is a way for me to get my needs met while also having that connection to my deep core values. Currently, I have a lot of practices, but I'm going to share kind of my top 3 with everyone. They tend to kind of correspond with our seasons. Here in Colorado, and being a native to this beautiful state, we have 4 very different seasons. And each season is so unique and so different. And so my self-care practices truly do reflect the seasons. Since we are going into the summer, which I am so excited about, my top practice right now is time in nature, kind of combined with a sunshine warmth component. Warmth is extremely healing for me. Next, I totally enjoy my body movement sessions, exercise, whatever you want to call it. I need some sort of sweat session on a daily basis. Those endorphins are truly what kind of help my mental state. So it's a mental workout as much as a physical workout for me. And finally, I do prioritize my sleep. I am a person that religiously gets 8 to 9 hours a night, and that fuels me forward. I look forward to speaking with you all here soon. Thank you again for joining us. And now I'm going to turn it over to Tina. Thank you.
Thanks, Brandy. Hi, everyone. My name is Tina Littleton. I am originally from Michigan, but I followed the mountains about 3 years ago from Chicago, seeking a better quality of life. As Alexis mentioned, I'm an integrative health coach trained by Duke University here at Progressive. And my definition of self-care is simple. It's taking time to do things that make me happy, that help manage my stress, and that allow me to have a positive flow throughout the day. Some of my current practices are movement, meditation, listening to my favorite music, and my wind down routine before bed. And I will go into a little bit more detail about those later on. I'm going to pass it along to Angie.
Thanks, Tina. Thanks, Brandy. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. So all of our backgrounds are completely different. Mine is also, it's very scattered, actually. I started out, my name's Angie Hartman, by the way, it's because I didn't introduce myself. So mine's very scattered. I started out with an emphasis on fashion. I spent the first 6-8 years right after college as a retail buyer. And then I opened my own business, a bridal shop, just after that, and then moved on to corporate life and focused more on marketing, ranging anywhere from IT consulting to beauty. And I'm originally from Michigan, like Tina, and I moved to New York in 2014 with my husband. And after about a few years there and deciding to have a child, the pace of life just wasn't matching what I wanted for my life. And so we decided to move here to Colorado. We relocated about a year ago. I have a child, she's almost 2. And I feel like the work-life balance is much more like reasonable here in Colorado. And it's also a beautiful state. So I would say for me, self-care for me is very much, it's a lot of different things, but I really, really need exercise. Like Brandy was saying, it's so important for me. I need to get those endorphins going. I think another huge thing for me is alone time, having a family, and also being in the industry that I'm in with coaching and fitness. It's really important to have that time and space for myself. And I love, during that time, I love journaling, meditation, and a huge hobby of mine is, and actually the biggest stress reliever for me is creating and sharing new recipes. I started a blog a few years ago, and it's like one of the most cultivating, curing things that I can do for my body. And I absolutely, it's probably the most calming thing I can do. So I would say for me, those are my self-care practices. And it's really important for me when I feel out of balance to bring myself back to one of these things to help keep myself in alignment. So with that, I'm going to pass it on over back to Tina, and she's going to talk through, we're going to do some breath work. Sorry about that, guys. So, all right, so we're going to get into this a little bit deeper as I started my presentation, but I really want to start the presentation with a grounding practice. And I think that's really important when I'm teaching yoga, and then also in my own practice to come back to that breath. So I invite you to close your eyes, maybe set aside your phone, close any browsers, keep your feet flat on the ground. And let's just start by taking a few breaths. So take a 2-count inhale. Hold at the top, and then release for 4 counts. Let's take that breath again. Deep inhale through the nose, 2 counts. Hold at the top, and draw that breath all the way back down through the base of the spine for 4 counts. Next, inhale for 3. Hold at the top, and exhale for 6 counts. Take another deep breath in for 3 counts. Hold at the top and exhale for 6 counts. Next, inhale, take for 4 counts. Hold it at the top and breathe it all out, 8 counts. One more deep breath in, delicious inhale, 4 counts. Hold at the top. And exhale for 8. Slowly tuning back into the body, feeling your surroundings, taking in all that is around you, sight, sound, taste, smell, and slowly opening your eyes back up and coming back. Do we feel better? Hopefully we do. And with that, I'm going to turn it on over to Tina. Take it away, Tina.
Thank you, Angie. Thanks for being patient while we transition here. So some benefits of breath work are that it cultivates a deeper attention. It relieves stress and anxiety. So when you engage in breath work, you change the nervous system's response to stress. It also promotes muscle relaxation. So health and wellness terms tend to be subjective. So for the purpose of this lesson, we are defining resilience and self-care. Resilience is a feature of a person that demonstrates the ability to bend but not break. Leaders need resilience because they are often faced by obstacles that can overwhelm them, but few remain defeated for long. Resilience trains our brains. It helps our intention to enhance creativity, positivity, and attention by avoiding distraction, fear, and boredom. With resilience, you can bounce back faster, better heal your pain, are happier and more productive, and you get more mileage from your brain. Resilience is your inner strength that helps you withstand and bounce back from adversity as well as prevent and grow from life's hardships. Self-care is a way of living that incorporates behaviors that allow a person to maintain health and balance, replenishing energy and motivation, and the ability to grow to one's highest self. We all know the importance of eating a healthy diet and engaging in regular physical activity. But self-care goes beyond those basics, and it can include many more, such as improving your surroundings, developing a practice that exercises your mind and soul, like meditation. It's doing a walk outside without multitasking. It's soaking in a hot bubble bath. It's watching a beautiful sunrise, or it could be staring out a window listening to your favorite music. Self-care practices don't have to be purchased on Amazon. Now I'm going to turn it over to Angie, where she's going to discuss the what of resilience and self-care.
Hi, everybody. So thank you, Tina. I appreciate you passing it on over and giving us that baseline. So understanding what resiliency is and self-care is. I'm going to take us through the why. Why do we need to be resilient? Why do we need self-care? And when I started thinking about this presentation, I started thinking about, I wanted to pull some statistics about where we are as Americans. And we're hearing this more and more, that we're more stressed, but what does that actually look like? And I pulled this from, according to the 2017 survey by American Psychological Association, 79% of Americans are stressed. That's overwhelming. I don't know about you guys, but that's absolutely shocking. And I see it in my health coaching practice and in everything that I do. Most people, have some sort of stress in their life, and that's unfortunate. But what are the causes of stress? So they could be lack of time, it could be kids, it could be work, it could be a tragedy, whatever it is. But more and more, we're seeing more like increase in stress because of external factors like politics and violence in our world, and now social media. And so we're seeing this huge incline of stress. So how do we wrap our heads around that and kind of approach that for all of these groups? And so I was looking to see kind of, is it in one age group more than another? But it's really kind of the same across the board. So millennials, 18 to 39, are 59%. Baby boomers, you're at 57%, Gen Xers, 67%, and 72 plus is 56%. So it's not just one particular group. Why Gen Xers are pretty high, it's pretty even, and that's according to the American Institute for Stress. So looking at those numbers, I really want to talk about what is stress, because there are different types of stress. There's good stress and bad stress. And we actually need stress in our body because there's some stress that can actually have a positive effect on our body, and then some that have an adverse effect, creating inflammatory responses that are maybe good or bad. So stress plays a huge part in our body. It correlates with our immune system, but not just the immune system. It has a huge effect on the brain, huge effect on our digestive health, our hormonal health, our gut health. It's such a huge thing that we have to tackle this in small ways. So let's talk about acute stress. Now, this could last a couple of minutes. It could be where our cells are start to mobilize, and it potentially prepares the body for an injury or a fight or flight response. So we call it running from the saber-toothed tiger. That's what my meditation advisor calls it. But that's what we call the fight or flight response. So for instance, let's say you get a paper cut and immediately the inflammation kind of attacks right to that cut and you start getting that inflammatory response. So that is actually good because it prepares the body. It fights for the body. So that short-term inflammation is actually good and it's initiating healing. But then there's long-term stress, that chronic stress, that underlying stress that actually dysregulates our immune system, and that makes us more susceptible to these diseases, even things as easy as the common cold or common flu. not to mention things like bigger diseases and cancer. So we definitely want to learn how we can manage that stress, protect our immune system, and keep that inflammatory level low. And I love this quote by Dr. Calabrese. It's, your immune system's designed to protect you from toxins and infections, but it can become overactive, leading to inflammation, or underactive, leaving you vulnerable to the flu and more serious infections. So let's just pause for a moment. I just want to ask all of you a question. So we've just looked at the good stress and bad stress in the body and the impact it has in the body. Does anyone have any questions here at this point? Okay, we'll continue moving along. Alexis, you just stop me if there is a question.
I will.
So let's move along to the second segment here. I want to talk about presencing. And Dr. Amit Sood is, so the program here that we follow at Progressive Health, and all of us integrative health coaches, we are trained in Dr. Sood's program from Mayo Clinic. And so he talks a lot about dealing with a negative bias and presencing. And I love this quote from his book. If you've read Stress-Free Living from Dr. Amit Sood, it's wonderful. And it's actually a great book because it talks about how we can become more present. So at any given time, we have over 150 tabs open in our brain. Think about that. So this prevents us from actually enjoying our daily life. So if you think about it in terms of, if I look at my computer screen, and I see all the tabs open on my computer screen, number one, that shows what type of a person I am. But number two, it's stressful. There's a lot going on. So how do we hone in and let kind of that stuff that's always going to be there, but how do we allow ourselves to become more present? So there's two different modes. That you have the default mode and then you have a focus mode. And the mind has a propensity to discount the present success by focusing so much on the pleasure of future moments. So that creates this negative bias in us, which pushes away joy, and it makes us not able to enjoy the present, which who wants that? Our lives are so short. We want to enjoy the lives we're living. So how do we do that? So unfortunately, because our mind is wired this way and our body's wired this way, to maintain in this stress state, we have to overcome this negative propensity. So there are 5 core principles that Dr. Amit Sood talks about in his book, 5 of which, one is gratitude, compassion, acceptance, higher meaning, and forgiveness. While I would love to go into detail on each of these, be sure to ask Alexis. We have a webinar designed for each of these different core principles that we would love to take you through at a future webinar. But for now, I want to just kind of recap. So far, we've covered the difference between chronic stress and acute stress. We've talked about the core principles as tools for how to overcome this negative bias. Is there any questions at this point? I see something in chat, but I'm not quite sure what that is. Okay, so I'm just going to continue on. So moving on to self-care. Why do we need self-care? So we just talked about this predisposition to this negative bias, which is something that we need to try to overcome. And then we talk about this fight or flight mode that our body is naturally predisposed to go back to when we're in that situation of trauma or tragedy. And I love this quote by Dr. Amit Sood. It says, "The mind isn't rational, it's short-sighted, lacks self-control, is guided by rigid bias, and jumps to premature conclusions, and gets hijacked by impulses, infatuation, and fear. The mind falls prey to distractions." Ain't that the truth? So how do we become resilient? So we're going to talk about that. So self-care, how does it help us become resilient? And what is self-care? So what does self-care do to the body? So there are 2 different types of automatic things that we don't control. It's called the involuntary nervous system. The same things we don't really have control over or any thought. So there's systematic, and then there's the parasympathetic nervous system. So those 2 should operate succinctly. They should be balanced. So when the sympathetic nervous system is aroused, it puts us on high alert. We're in that running from the saber-toothed tiger. We're in this fight or flight mode. Our only thing we're thinking about right now is survival because there's a threat. So this could be, like I was talking about before, the paper cut. It could be, you know, you're preparing for a big presentation. You're getting everything, all the blood and oxygen are increasing in your body. You're preparing for that fight or flight mode. But that is good. That's normal. That's healthy. But in contrast, the parasympathetic nervous system, when that is aroused, it produces this relaxed feeling, not just over the body, but over the mind. So when these two systems work together, that is when we are in perfect alignment and in balance. So we definitely don't want to keep that constant state of high alert or high anxiety, because that keeps that inflammation in the body, and we don't want to do that. So we want to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, and we do that by initiating self-care practices. So I love this example. When I am meditating, and trust me, this did not happen right away when I first started meditating, but this is an example of activating that parasympathetic nervous system. So when I'm in meditation, it takes me about 3 or 4 minutes, maybe a little bit longer sometimes, depending on the day. I get to this point where I'm just on the borderline of like, I want to like fall asleep, or my head starts nodding. And I feel this wave just kind of crash over my body, calming my mind and my body. All the stuff that was in my head is gone. So while that may not be meditation for you, it is for me, and there could be other forms of self-care. That's an example of how you can activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So after going through that, I know it's a lot of information I'm throwing at you. So after that explanation, is it easy to understand why it's important to activate that parasympathetic nervous system and how self-care helps us do that? Hopefully I'm seeing lots of nods. Yes. Okay, so if no questions, I'm going to continue to move on. I just want to make sure we're absorbing this because it's a lot of information.
Angie?
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is actually, so I find myself sometimes, I don't know how to catch myself when I start focusing too much on the negative until I'm just full-blown stressed. Is like there a way to sort of be more conscious when you start to lean towards, oh, I'm going down, I'm focusing too much on the negative before.
So that's a great question. And that's the default mode versus focused mode. And the 5 core principles kind of gets into that, how to do that a little bit deeper, which we can expand on, but I'll just tell you in short, you have to, so once you catch yourself in that point, you're deciding to focus on something else. Let's say, for instance, it's gratitude. So when you start to find yourself in that negative tunnel, that rabbit hole of negativity, trust me, we all have those moments. When you start to find yourself there, that's when you kind of spark into, let's say you pull out gratitude. And maybe you just acknowledge just the simple things like food, you have food, or there's sunshine today, or thank you for my family, or sending gratitude to a person or a thing. Thinking about just one positive thing, just to kind of defy that negativity.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you.
But that's a great lead-in. So these 5 core principles, a webinar for each of these to talk about, because they're absolutely valuable tools that we can all incorporate into our daily lives. So thank you for that question, Alexis. It was great. Okay, so what is resilience? Tina talked about it in the beginning. But basically when you're faced with a tragedy, natural disaster, health concern, all these other things, resilience is how well you're able to adapt to that event in your life. And someone with good resiliency can quickly bounce back, right? More so than someone who is stressed and doesn't have the resiliency practices. So why do we need to be resilient? Anybody have any good guesses? Anyone? All right, so why do we need to be resilient? So we can live healthy lives free of chronic disease, free of stress, and be happy. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I want to live that life. So I'm going to end on this quote. I love this quote by Dr. Leonard Cohen. Everybody has resiliency. It's just a question of how much and how well you put it to good use in your life. Resilience doesn't mean a person doesn't feel the intensity of the events surrounding them. Instead, it just means they found a pretty good way of dealing with it more quickly than others. So when you're thinking through this, resiliency is a practice. Self-care is a practice. It doesn't happen overnight. So we're going to get through this. I'm going to pass it over to Tina, who's going to actually take us through her personal story about how she created resiliency in her workplace. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. That was a lot of great info. So now I'm going to share with you my personal journey of how I was working in corporate America and then how I ultimately found balance in my life. So a little over a year ago, I was working at a commercial real estate firm in retail leasing here in Denver, and I experienced overwhelming burnout at this job. I fueled this burnout by binging on sugar and caffeine when I would get stressed, and I would stay long hours staring into a computer screen. So eventually, these unhealthy habits I created started to affect other areas of my life. The relationships with people closest to me, my sleep, I was eating poorly. I went from being in tune with my body to then experiencing extreme mind-body disconnect. I was out of balance. I was irritable. My happiness and just my overall appreciation for life was getting tampered with. My flame was dimming. I realized I needed to take a step back. Was this path really was this path I was headed down really worth my health at risk? Was the paycheck and the opportunity to crawl up the corporate ladder and risking my relationships really worth it? No. But do I regret the experience? No. This was my journey of personal and professional growth that really put my physical and emotional health on the back burner. But through developing self-care practices and finding balance, I got to a new place and was able to get clear-headed. So what got me there? I'm the type of person that needs at least 8 hours of sleep, which I was in denial with for years. So now I've developed a wind down routine. I start with getting my phone out of the bedroom, which this is huge because it works on so many levels. It gets rid of the blue spectrum light that disrupts the secretion of melatonin. But also, it's the last thing we look at before we go to sleep, especially if it's on your bedside table, which that's not the right stimulation to be bathing your brain in right before you try to get deep restorative sleep. So when I wake up in the morning, I typically continue my self-care practices by putting on an extremely cozy robe, making a cup of herbal tea, and meditating for 3 minutes. Eventually, I hope to meditate for longer, but this is enough time for me right now to set good intentions and establish a clear focus for the day. Another self-care practice of mine is movement. So I try to get at least some sort of exercise daily because I recognize that it has a huge impact on my mood. I do yoga, I do Pilates, I do weightlifting, I go for a walk in the park, or if I'm in a time crunch, then I typically do like a 7-minute workout on YouTube. And then I also do like aerial fitness. I try to switch it up so I don't get bored. I also practice gratitude throughout the day. So for instance, when I'm driving in my car, I found this practice to be extremely beneficial. My transition out of real estate wasn't easy, but when I took a step back and was able to truly get comfortable with the uncomfortable, I redefined my purpose. I shifted my mindset and I got my stress under control. Now I wake up and I realize that I get to work out. I get to go to work. I get to make dinner. What are your self-care rituals? What makes you a better you, a more optimized you? Is it saying no more frequently? Taking deeper breaths? Getting more sleep? What makes you feel good physically, mentally, and emotionally? This isn't a one-size-fits-all practice. You decide what you need to make yourself become your highest self. Self-care enabled me to shift my mindset and gain a better understanding of what I needed and what makes me the best version of myself. I can now say that I'm more present in my everyday life because of these practices. I'm going to share with you a client testimonial. So during my time at Progressive Health Center, I've started working with a physician in the Denver area. Within the past 5 years, she's had 3 very traumatic events happen in her life. By choosing to be mindful and accepting these challenges that life threw at her, she was able to recover and be more stronger and resilient than before. Acceptance embraces life's uncertainties by letting go of the uncontrollable and unengaging with the unpleasant. It means flowing with the imperfections so you don't waste time removing the last tiny weed. She accepted these events as part of her story and did not let them define her. It led her to develop perseverance and strength. You can find moments each day to pause and appreciate the flowers that have bloomed in your life's garden. I have witnessed nurses ever since I started working at Progressive again that have incorporated self-care practices into their work life to help them become more resilient. So, for example, there's a nurse that suffers from migraines and blurred vision, and he comes down to the lounge to use the Hypervolt, which is a machine that helps with muscle tension and blood flow. And then he pairs that with peppermint and lavender aromatherapy. He found a self-care practice that allowed him to listen to his body, treat his pain naturally, and he was able to get back on his feet and finish his shift. This is an empowering regimen. A self-care practice like this creates mindfulness and helps overcome overwhelming obstacles. Your body is strong and it wants to feel good. The choices you make in challenging situations can determine your resiliency and quality of life. Now I'm going to share with you the benefits of self-care. So these are based on hundreds of Dr. Amit Sood's research studies. Happier people have lower expression of inflammation-producing genes. When you're happy, your genes are happy. Happier people have healthier and younger cells for their biological age. When you're happy, your cells' tissues are happy. Happier people have stronger immune systems with lower risk of infections. Happier people have lower risk of heart attack. Happiness decreases activity in the brain's pain network. Happier people have more discipline about physical activity. So when you're happy, you get moving. Research shows that the 3 contributors to your happiness are your genetic makeup at 50%, your life situations at 10%, and your chosen thoughts and actions at 40%. The takeaway is that almost half of your happiness depends on your choices. You can give happiness by connecting with loved ones and friends, engaging in creative activities, and caring for others. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and now I'm going to pass it along to Brandy, where she'll discuss the how you nurture resilience and self-care.
Hi guys, thanks Tina. All right, I'm going to share some slides with everyone to give you some takeaway tools and practices for resiliency and self-care. So in order to do that, I think I'm going to need to share my screen with you. So if you would just be patient with me while I pull up my slides.
I also forgot to encourage everyone to get a piece of paper, a scratch paper, and a pen to help you while you're going through this. So you could do it with Brandy together.
Great, thank you for that, Alexis. Yeah, this is going to be super informal or formal. It's totally up to you. I've got about 7 slides to share with everybody. I'm going to walk you through each step because this is kind of the action portion or the tool takeaway portion. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to stop me. But you are going to get some visuals with this. So I'm leaving it on our title screen right now because this is a great opportunity to remind you all of one of our learning targets of this webinar. We had a learning target of creating a personalized self-care wheel that reflects your current needs, your current self-care needs. So again, we love doing stuff like this because this is a tool that you'll be able to take away from this webinar and implement immediately into your life. So with that, I am going to move us on to our next slide. Great. So on that piece of paper, or if you don't have a piece of paper, just start to kind of brainstorm a list in your head. I'd love for you to take a moment to reflect on the people, the places, and the practices that fill your cup, that speak to your self-care needs. I'm going to walk you through a few examples if you're struggling to get started on your brainstorming list. But I've also included an image here off to your right, if you can see my cursor. This is the Wheel of Health from Duke Integrative Medicine, and they look at a whole body approach. So I'm just going to read you some of their categories, if you will, to help spark some ideas. So they talk about whole body wellness in regards to the physical environment. That could be your personal environment, your work environment, or the places in between. It can be your personal and professional development, your nutrition, your movement, your rest, your exercise, the mind-body connection, your spirituality, and relationships and communication. So these words are subjective for all of us. So you can make these big concepts, or you can make them more micro, more small concepts. If you're still struggling to get started on that list, then I'm going to share some personal examples from my self-care list, if you will, to help get you started. So this is the part where I'd love it if you could brainstorm anywhere from 8 to 10 self-care tips, practices, tools, whatever you want to call them. My challenge to you is I really want you to make them as authentic as possible. It's what you need. I spent forever going through self-care practices thinking that that's what the rest of society was doing and that's what was going to work. I really needed to sit back and reflect and figure out what self-care practices I needed. So I am giving you the gift of time to do that for yourself right now. Now, I'm not going to read this whole list to you, but I am going to highlight a few things. So I told you all that I love time in nature and sunshine, and that my self-care needs tend to correspond with the seasons. There being 4 seasons in Colorado, this is very indicative of my summer self-care list. I'd also like to point out that your self-care needs tend to correspond with your personality and your learning style. So you're going to see a lot of me, obviously, because this is my list. So something I've been doing for the past year is once a month, my husband and I pick something that we've never done before, something that's been on our bucket list, if you will. It could be something small. It could be something big. But this really speaks to the adventurous spirit inside of me, and it really fills a self-care need, and it's something to motivate my brain, and I have something to look forward to, which is very powerful for me. I am an introvert, so much like Angie, my alone time. And my last one I'm going to point out is just recently, my husband and I have been doing date nights about once a week, whether it's in-house or out of house, but we've consciously decided that those date nights are without cell phones. And that's been a really important part for me to connect on that social health level. Verbally and nonverbal communication is a big part of that. So at this point, I hope you have kind of a list, again, of around 8 to 10 things that you're just brainstorming off the top of your head for self-care needs. Okay, I'm going to switch it to our next slide. So somewhere on your piece of paper, the bigger you can make this, the better. This is going to be our visual that we're going to work with for about 3 to 4 slides. I'd love it if you could recreate this image that you see here on your blank piece of paper. So it's just a big circle, and I'd even love for you to recreate these smaller gray inner concentric circles, almost looking at this like a bullseye image. And I picked 8 segments to divide my wheel into, but this is your self-care wheel. If you just want 4 big segments, 8 segments, 12 segments, it's totally up to you. Otherwise, let's just do 8 and move forward with that. The other reason I wanted to point out this wheel shape is because it's very representative of the whole person approach. You're going to see a lot of programs that use some sort of wheel to help convey their concepts. So again, the wheel is multi-dimensional, and that's how we want you to look at your self-care. So many of us get stuck in this rut of self-care being all physical or all social. And I want it to be multidimensional, so you make sure that you balance out the physical health part of your life, the mental, emotional part of your life, and then, of course, the social part of your life. If you were to think of those three concepts as a triangle, if we neglect or forget about one area, then it falls short, affecting the other areas of our triangle. So again, a wheel, all-encompassing of whole body, multidimensional. Okay, moving us along. Our next slide, what we're going to do is we're going to decide which self-care practices you'd like to focus on in the present moment. So this slide is all about the here and the now. You were brainstorming a list of about 8 to 10 self-care tools and self-care practices. Kind of pick your top 8, because we divided our circle into 8 segments. If you only used 4 segments for your wheel, then you're just going to pick 4 self-care practices to focus on. This is your wheel, and it represents the here and the now. Please remember that self-care is fluid. So we're not married to this concept. It might change tomorrow. So just the present moment. Also important to point out that your self-care tools and practices, they can reflect a daily need, a weekly need, or a monthly need. So for me, exercise is a daily need. My adventure, that's more of something I'm doing on a monthly basis. So it's up to you again how you design this. Okay, moving on. Okay, so what we're going to do is using the inner concentric gray circles, so these guys again, kind of how we were creating that bullseye, we're going to place a dot for each of our current practices for where we are today. So I want you to think of the middle of our circle or the middle of our bullseye as being highly engaged in that practice. Versus the outer portion of your circle is there's not really a lot of engagement in that practice. There's no right answer here. This is just your reality right now. So I'm using myself as an example. So you can see for breath work, it's something that's more towards the outer edge of my wheel or my circle. So it's something that while breath work is a priority, I'm not engaging in it as much as I would like to. Versus I told you I'm really putting exercise and sleep as a priority in my life right now. So those are closer to the bullseye. So I'd like to point out that the goal here is not to get all self-care practices into the center of the circle. We are not trying to seek perfection. Again, we are just painting a picture of our reality, and we're seeing what works, what doesn't work, and if there's something that we want to focus on or not. Your self-care practice is up to you. So we are going to just give you a second here to make sure you can place a dot on each one of your self-care practices. And then once you're done doing that, just go ahead and connect the dots. Perfect. Okay, I will move us on. Okay, this one looks a little more challenging, but I'm going to walk you through it, and there's a key over here to the right if you want to see what the different colors represent. So that past slide, that previous slide was all about the here, the now, and the present. This slide is all about the future. So as you did in step 4, you're going to now assess where you would ideally like your self-care practices to be in 3 to 6 months. And then you're just going to place a new dot and then connect all the dots. So essentially what you're doing here is you're creating SMART goals. And it's a best practice in the health coaching world when you're creating SMART goals to make these goals somewhere between a low goal and a high goal. So a low goal, those are things without challenge. They produce low productivity, and we don't feel really motivated after them. versus a high goal, these are pretty unattainable and not realistic. They leave us feeling very defeated. So again, that word balance comes up. Try to make these goals 3 to 6 months from now, somewhere between a low goal and a high goal. You'll replace your dot and then connect them. So the red is all current. The blue is where I'd like to be in 3 to 6 months from now. Again, what I'm doing is I'm just creating perspective for the brain. I'm not assessing myself necessarily. I'm not judging or critiquing myself. I'm just creating a picture or a perspective for my brain. When we write things down or when we say things out loud, it gives our brain different perspective than just having an inner dialogue on the concept. And if you're somebody who is like, oh, this is great, I love these goals, I might need support going through this, then this is a great option to partner with an integrative health coach. And that's someone who can help you set SMART goals, give you the motivation, give you the support and the accountability, and if needed, give you education and resources to help get these self-care needs to where you would like them to be. So I am going to move us to our last 2 slides. And this is more reflection-based. So I'd love for you to look at your self-care wheel that you just created. Reflect on that space that you created between your current and your ideal self-care practices, remembering that no human is perfect, nor should we be seeking perfection. Not all our dots should be in the center, but rather balanced so that we can create this calm, authentic balance of self-care needs in our life, constantly readjusting, because that's reality. Just because there's low or no engagement in a self-care practice does not automatically mean it's an area where a client should focus their attention on first. So I'm actually going to pause here, and I'm going to take you back to our previous slide and use an example to have this point clarified. So if you look at my breathwork dot, you'll see that I don't have a lot of engagement in this area. Most of you would look at my self-care wheel and say, wow, Brandy, you should really focus on breath work because there's not a lot of engagement in that area. However, I'm going to move us back to our reflection. Sometimes focusing on an area that requires a little less change is a little more palatable for us to acknowledge and move forward, creates more intrinsic motivation, and propels us forward. If we can be successful in one area, chances are we're going to get a ripple effect, a positive one, into other areas of that self-care wheel. So it's a different way to think about if and when you want to start tackling self-care. Again, there's a little plug here for health coaches, great to partner with if this is something on the top of your summer to-do list. And then kind of a last point I want to leave you with for this slide is this is a visual that you've just created for yourself. So many of us are visual learners. Use this as an image board or some sort of visual to spark motivation. This can really help move the brain from a contemplation stage into a preparation stage. Okay, my last slide as we wrap up. So I'm not going to read you all these questions. These are sensory experience questions that speak to your limbic system. So think feelings and emotions and stress management portion of your brain. These have that deep emotional connection, and so they help us reflect. You'll see they're all open-ended inquiry questions, and this is what leads again to that intrinsic motivation, thus creating sustainable change. A lot of us are capable of change, but what we seek and what we desire is sustainable change. Also, this is a good wraparound for Alexis's earlier question about emotions, that these reflection questions and this practice that you just went through as far as creating self-care tools, they create positive emotions. When we have a higher ratio of positive to negative emotions, it increases our resiliency, which is imperative for the learning to happen in our brain. Learning is creating new neural pathways. And 3 to 6 months, I picked that timeline for a reason, is because that's the average amount of time it takes the brain to create a new neural pathway. Think of neural pathway as a pattern or a habit in your daily life. We all have good ones. We all have bad ones, things to focus on, things we want to remove. So that's a neural pathway. As adults, we are capable of neuroplasticity and changing our brains. Some of us just need some support and accountability along the way. So the last thing I want to leave you with is that you're the expert on your life. You know what's best, and you have the autonomy to decide if, where, and when you start. But we have loved talking to you all about self-care today and resiliency, and would be happy to partner with anybody if you're wanting further information on resiliency and or self-care. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Tina to kind of conclude our webinar today. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy. So I'm going to close with just a little bit more about health coaching. By partnering with a health coach, you evaluate each area of your life, address your goals, and you get the resources you need to manage stress and create balance. We can also assist you in developing the spark or outlet you're missing. So whether it be incorporating more movement into your life, creating a more meaningful relationship with your spouse or friends, or picking up a hobby that sparks joy. It's getting comfortable with the uncomfortable that ultimately helps you generate that shift. So as health coaches, we facilitate your process of self-healing and personal growth to sustain a healthy lifestyle and empower you to live a more fulfilling life. Please tell Alexis if you're interested in our webinar series. We have 5 webinars on the 5 core principles of stress-free living. So gratitude, acceptance, compassion, higher meaning, and forgiveness. Thanks again for tuning in. And we would like to open, if anyone has any questions, we would love to answer them.
Yeah, somebody did ask, someone who's thinking about making a lifestyle change, how would they get connected to a health coach? And I don't know if they live locally or perhaps in another state.
Yeah, the beauty of health coaching is that it can be a one-on-one partnership, or it can be a virtual partnership. It can even be a phone conversation. A lot of the times a virtual component or just being on the phone with a health coach gives a client who's hesitant to start that partnership the safety of their own surroundings and their safety of not being seen. There's positives and drawbacks to each setup, but Progressive Health Center offers a wide variety of health coaches. Each one of us are health coaches, so that would be a great place to start. Again, it's a partnership, and the beauty of having 3 of us here is we have 3 distinct personalities, and you can kind of decide which person you're drawn to. And it's something that as health coaches, we know that it's not always a fit, and if you need to seek other health coaches until you are comfortable and safe, you totally get it.
And to add to that, Alexis, I just want to say, so most of my clients have been through Skype or Zoom or FaceTime. So most of them aren't in person. So it doesn't matter where you are.
All right, good to know. And could you remind us what the book about stress-free living is that you mentioned earlier in the webinar?
It's just, so that is our core principles. So Progressive Health started this a couple of years ago, and they based it on the resiliency training through Dr.Amit Sood from Mayo Clinic. So Stress-Free Living is one of his books, but he also has several other books, one specifically on resilience, a new one that just came out on self-care, I think. But there are several books that he has authored, and also if you want to catch any of his YouTube videos, he's got a bunch of stuff on YouTube, and if you want to go to his website, you can just Google Dr.Amit Sood, Mayo Clinic. I don't know the website offhand, but this is where we are all trained, and that's where the basis of Progressive Health is started.
Perfect. That's very helpful. And we have a few more minutes if anybody else has a question, but just to wrap up, I wanted to let everyone know what is upcoming from the HealthLink side of things. For those in Edwards, Colorado, there's a Business to Breakfast Work Family Connection event happening on that was today. Well, sometimes we're a little behind, but we do have a workplace well-being symposium happening in Grand Junction on June 5th, and plenty of advance warning. Registration is open for the annual HealthLink celebration, where we give out awards for the healthiest workplaces around the state. So check out our events calendar for all of that information. And we hope you are also able to stay connected with HealthLinks online. We are on Facebook and Twitter and our website there. And later today, I'll be sending out an email with the information presented in this webinar and contact information for myself, and our panelists. So if you have any additional questions, you can reach out directly. Any other last thoughts? I think those are all of our questions.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for being here. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Alexis.